Right. And I think there are multiple school of thought when it comes to an idea of, being a founder entrepreneurship. So first thing that I want to highlight is it has become a viable career choice out there, right? So if I look at my journey, I kind of, did my education, worked in the corporate world, got a lot of experience out there, right? Build a bit of financial stability, and then took the plunge, right? So that's one school of thought, and it has its own merits out there, right? The other school of thought is start early and fail early if you need to, because at that point of time you have less liabilities, you can do more mistakes, and still, you can have second, third, fourth chances out there, right? So, and it suits, I would say, more to the individual, and there are merits and demerits on both schools of thoughts out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak with GRV. My name is Gaurav Singh, and I am the host of the show. Every time I invite a guest on Speak with GRV, I say the word that today's guest is really special. But to be honest, today the guest is a little bit extra special, I would say, because today we have Nishant Chawla sir. Nishant sir was also my professor when I was doing my MBA, and I would say I really enjoyed his classes. So to do something in real life and having my professor on the show, who's now also become from an educator, he has transitioned into an entrepreneur, and before that he was into corporate world. So it would be in the journey that he has gone through, what he's building right now, how was the transition, all those conversations we are going to have. But first of all, how are you, Nishant sir? How are you doing? That's it.
I'm good, Gaurav, and thanks for inviting me to the show. Right, I'm really glad to see what you have been working post your MBA, along with your full-time job. You are able to, trying to build something very meaningful for your audience. So congratulations for that. So I'm really glad to be over here.
So thank you so much, sir. So, sir, starting with my first question would be, first you had worked in the corporate, then you moved into the education section, and then now you are into entrepreneurship. So how that journey has been, how the roles and responsibilities have changed over the years?
So I think this is a question that a lot of people ask me, right? Because and I start with saying something that Steve Jobs have said, right? That you can't plan your life forward, right? You can't connect the dots forward. You always
Yeah.
connect it backward, right? So just going back and giving you a perspective, it has been exactly 6 years in this week that I left my, I would say, comfortable corporate life, right? Not many people say that, but my life was very comfortable when I was in a corporate world. I actually loved my job, right? My spouse was in the same company as I was, right? And both of us together were in Pune, having a very comfortable life and earning among the top percentile probably in the country out there. And that probably the over comfort at times, led me to think to, what I want to do with my life. So I had a dream, and after spending 6 to 7 years in the corporate world post my MBA, I thought to take a break. And one of my dream was to be a travel photographer. So I took a sabbatical. Ultimately, I did not get. I had to leave my job. I don't recommend many people to do it because post MBA I had built enough financial stability out there, right? And my spouse was working, right? So I took that plunge, went across India and Bhutan for 100 days on a backpacking trip. Lived my dream of being a travel photographer. Photographs got published in some magazines, so I enjoyed that time really well, right? And given my personal commitment, I realized probably that's not the career path, that I would be able to pursue in the long term. And education was one thing that I was always passionate about. It might sound cliche, but yeah. So what happened is I started working with few schools in Pune, the MBA schools in Pune, and then I was invited to some of the best schools in India. And in my past experience, I had traveled to Harvard, I had traveled to schools in Europe, so I knew how the infrastructure and how the process works. So that's how I kind of transition into being an educator. And I started loving that space, right? Because I had some learnings that I could bring for the students. Also, it used to give me a good night's sleep. right? And the impact I was able to create was very meaningful out there. So I think that was a shift from a corporate life to educator. And while being an educator, I realized there's still a lot of gaps to be fulfilled, right? And while as a part of a university or as a part of system, we were moving in that direction, but I believe my skills and my efforts, being independently, I can do much more. And my co-founder Amol, he was also working in the education space for a while out there, and we got talking about this idea, which is now Let's Unbound, the company I'm run along with Amol. Somewhere around 2019, 2020, we started talking about it. And when COVID happened, life kind of slowed down a bit. We got more time for ourselves, right? And that's where we kind of started with this idea where we said, we have to create a meaningful impact in education. And the area we thought is looking at the school and the foundational years out there, right? So our focus at Let's Unbound today is working with that age group, specifically on 21st century skills. So that's what I am doing out there. So that has been the kind of journey Gaurav out there.
Sir, you mentioned that you went to one of the best schools, one of the best colleges to teach, and I would say that is because you were one of the best teachers. So that is something I can vouch for, having seen your teaching methodology. Sir, you talked about how you made the transition to Let's Unbound. So my question would be, if you can define more clearly, what is Let's Unbound, and like what are you doing with Let's Unbound?
So primarily at Let's Unbound, what we are doing is, I would say we looked at 2, 3 key areas, right? While I was teaching, and Amol, when he was working in education space out there, is one, there are a lot of foundational literacies which are still missing. And if you look at the new education policy of India and across the world, there has been a lot of focus on skills and foundational literacies. The second thing we realize is there's a lot of aspiration rising in youth where they want to start early, right? They're not waiting for years to complete education and then go in a job environment and then go for a PhD. Of course, a lot of people do it, and I respect that. But we saw that there's a aspiration which is rising out there, right?
Yes.
And we saw a lot of gaps, right? So if you look at some of the skills, right, while students are well prepared for a competitive examination, they're not able to articulate their ideas, right? So that's a basic, so to say, public speaking skill. Other thing that I realized, not just in students, but also, my colleagues in work, managing their financials, right? So basic financial literacy skills, computational thinking skills, right? So there are a lot of skills we realize, if done at a school level or at an early age, can give a lot of leverage out there. And that's where we started with Let's Unbound, offering 21st century skills. So today, if you look at, we have key mission where we are saying we are laying foundations for school, college, career, and life. And one of the key value proposition we talk about is, we give you life skills by 18 so that you can reach your life goals early, right? So that's the key thing that we are doing.
So talking about I'll say your target audience, the students that you're currently catering to. So are these students in the beginning of their career phase, or you're also targeting students, let's say post grad or above that?
So primarily we are dealing with K-12, what we call from KG to 12, right?
Okay.
So this is from age group of 6 to 18. That's primarily we are trying to serve those students out there, right? So that's the core, I would say, audience that we are working at this point of time. And we also have some solutions for schools in India. So that's another key area that we are developing now. And we have launched recently an entrepreneurship program for schools in India. I am personally, built a program in terms of integrating AI and Chat GPT in education. So Gaurav, what we have done is we have designed these universal curriculum, which can be accessed by students. And primarily we are focusing on K to 12, which is KG to 12, which is age group of 6 to 18. And we have students across different parts of the world, right? From USA to Uganda, from India, right? And we have recently launched a couple of programs for schools also. One of the key major skills is entrepreneurship program, and also a training program more for the school leaders and the teachers in terms of integrating AI and Chat GPT into education. So those are the two programs that we have recently launched.
Sir, for you as in, for example, one thing is the entrepreneurial aspect to it. One thing is the teaching aspect when you're teaching to kids. So you have taught students who are MBA students, quite mature students. So their level of understanding, methodology that is used there, and the one that you're using right now, where kids are growing up, they are, you can say full of energy, little attention. So how do you handle that aspect of it, of teaching this different, you can say, age group?
Right. So I would say it's inversely proportional to the age. So the difficulty of teaching is inversely proportional to the age, right? So it's much more difficult to handle a 6 year versus an
Yes,
MBA
obviously.
student out there, right? And the good thing we have done, I have hired smarter people than me, right? So people who are expert in that space, right? So we have experts in primary school level, we have at middle school level, and high school is something which I'm comfortable teaching myself. And of course I've taught at post graduation, undergraduation level out there, right? So it's a very different skill, as you rightly said. So we have a team. So we are now almost 50 plus team members out there, and majority of them are mentors, right? So we believe in the idea of mentorship out there.
Yes, sir. Sir, and you talked about the aspect of introducing entrepreneurship at this age. So, do you think, like, in your opinion, the earlier you introduce these aspects, the better, or do you think, maybe initial grasp you give them, and gradually, if they, have to decide, they can go onto this field?
Right. And I think there are multiple school of thought when it comes to an idea of, being a founder entrepreneurship. So first thing that I want to highlight is it has become a viable career choice out there, right? So if I look at my journey, I kind of, did my education, worked in the corporate world, got a lot of experience out there, right? Build a bit of financial stability, and then took the plunge, right? So that's one school of thought, and it has its own merits out there, right? The other school of thought is start early and fail early if you need to, because
Yes.
at that point of time you have less liabilities, you can do more mistakes, and still, you can have second, third, fourth chances out there, right? So and it suits, I would say, more to the individual, and there are merits and demerits on both schools of thoughts out there, right? So our aim as an organization is to give an exposure to the student at an early stage, to say, okay, this is also an viable career option. It's not just being fancy stuff that you see on TVs, on shows, right? Entrepreneurship has it's equivalent to like being a doctor out there, right? So that's a career path that somebody can take. You can be an engineer, you can be an entrepreneur solving a problem, right? And there's so many problems to be solved, or probably you have a vision of the world and you bring those ideas to the world. So that's one of the key thing for the program that we have launched, and that's primarily focused more on middle school, and I would say largely on high school students.
Yes, sir. So this was about, you can say, the teaching part of it, the core part of what Let's Unbound is doing. But as you mentioned when we were, starting the conversation, it's a long journey that you have to travel for students to actually understand that how valuable these skills are, and then more students will get connected. So in terms of building this organization, Let's Unbound, when you're forming a team, what is your, I would say, hiring philosophy? Are you looking for certain aspects that have to be there in any member who is joining this?
Right. So Gaurav, and that's a critical aspect that you have touched on, the hiring part, right? Because the hiring is always important, and especially the initial team that you get in. And if you ask me today, where do I spend most of the time, is hiring to get the right people in, right? Because I can't do anything alone, right? And not my co-founder. So we need capable people who can come in and fill in the gaps and the skills that we don't have today out there, right? So one thing that we see, because there are so many skills that we can articulate and talk about it, is a value fit out there, which at times gets difficult, but we kind of, give a lot of questions in terms of checking how would a certain person behave in the given situation, and try to see, are they a right fit for an environment like us, right? Because we have certain philosophies and values how we want to build the organization, right? So we are building it brick by brick, out there, not in a lot of hurry. Of course, we want to grow, but in a very sustainable way out there. Plus, we are looking at somebody who is culturally really fit out there, right? So that's one thing. If I have to give you an overarching theme in terms of hiring, that's what we do. Of course, specific to the role, there will be the hard skills or the soft skills that would be needed out there, right? If it's a digital marketing, you definitely need to have those skills. Other thing that we have done in our hiring, we have given a lot of chance to fresh people
Yes.
out there, right? Because we realize there's so much energy and potential, and that's the, so to say, the foundational mission for our organization. Also, the youth has so much energy and skills. How can we channelize them, right? So that's another thing that we have done in some of our roles, where we have given a chance to a lot of young people to come in and thrive in the environment.
Yes, sir. Sir, you also touched on an important aspect about culture. So, sir, when I was in MBA college, we had Professor, I think, Naval sir. So he used to tell us, whenever you go in an interview and the interviewer says, "Okay, so do you have any question for me?" You always ask, "How is the organization culture there?" Like, I've asked everything about compensation, perks, and all that. So my question to you also would be the same. Somebody coming into Let's Unbound, what organization culture he or she can expect?
Yeah, so that's a difficult question. Gonna probably will have to cut it. I'm telling you, right? Culture is very difficult to articulate, right? So it's very difficult to articulate, especially at an early stage out there, right? Because of course there are fancy words out there that there's a culture of trust, their culture of being caring, right? All those fundamental things, of course, we have out there, and culture is developed not by saying all these fancy words, and I would say by acting, right? So as a founder, I am able to act like that, or my co-founder, are we able to act like that? Because it kind of goes top down out there in an early phase of the organization, right? So that's something we believe in, and we ensure, and we are not perfect, that we walk the talk out there, right? So that what we have promised to the candidate who is coming in, they see what's happening. Because the early phase of any startup organization is I would say a bit hazy, because a lot of things are not very clear out there, right? The advantage is, as a founder, I'm connected to all the 50 members in the team, right? So they have a direct access to me. And with scale, all these becomes, I would say, very challenging out there, right? So culture is something which will bind all of the team together as we scale up, right? Anybody who comes in understand, okay, this is how we operate as an organization. So this is what I would do. So for example, one of the key things we say, whatever we do, the student or the kid is at the center of everything we do,
Right.
right? Our decision making would be aligned to that, so to say, key principle out there, right? So if a teacher has to spend extra hours, or if as a founder I have to talk to the parent, we would do it, right? We will not shy away from our responsibility to say, okay, because my work hours are over. None of the team member would behave in that way. They would say, okay, because that's the key principle, they would kind of align to that, right? And that's what we are trying to build. So it's saying what is the culture today is very difficult, Gaurav, right? So we'll probably cut short this, but I'm telling you very frankly, what is our culture? We're still trying to articulate as a team, right? We have some sense in our head as founders, what kind of people we want, we're trying to establish, but we have not articulated it, I would say, fully yet. So that articulation still needs to happen. So I'm not even able to give you a good articulation, Gaurav, out there.
So no, sir, I would say this answer was very well articulated, because as and when more team members would come, organizations would grow, your organization would grow. Then how the culture takes place, what is happening in the organization. So that is something which will happen over time, I would say, and that you would also get aware of dynamically.
Right. And other learning that I had in my corporate life, right? And I see a lot of people in the short term, right? When you complete your, say, undergrad or postgrad, I see a lot of preference going to the CTC, which is, how
Right.
much money you earn. But as you grow in your career, right? Maybe 5 years, 7 years down the line, right? You should feel like going to the office every day, right? And that's where this aspect of culture comes very important. It doesn't I would say we don't get sensitive about it on day one, But
Correct.
after spending time for 3 years, 5 years in the organization, we should be at a place where we feel we will thrive out there. Not everything will be perfect, right? No organization in the world is perfect. But yeah, you majorly say, okay, 80-90%, this is the place I want to come in every day, work with the right team out there. This is the set of customer I'm going to serve, and this is the environment which will help me thrive. I think that's a match, and it's always about match. It's not about being right or wrong out there, because every organization have their own culture. So
Exactly.
you have to see whether you are a right match over there, and as a founder, I have to see whether this person is a right match out there, right? So that becomes very, very important aspect in terms of our hiring and a lot of decision making out there.
Sir, when I was doing research about, like, for before this interview also, so I see two things. I'll say one I really liked, and second, I think you will explain what it is. So when I went to your LinkedIn, you have mentioned if you want to master anything, you should teach it. I think that's a very good quote. Because I was also watching a video on YouTube. Some IIT professor was teaching, and they used to say, whenever you learn a concept, if you could teach somebody, then you have learned it really well, and it almost stays with you forever. So I think that's a wonderful philosophy, I'll say. So the second thing is, when I went to the website of Let's Unbound, you have mentioned, and we also talked about it, that you are building children, you are preparing them with the 21st century skills. And sir, we have seen this in our education system, and I can also relate to it, that once you become, you complete your education and you're there in the market to work, to have a job, you don't actually have the required set of skills. You learn it on your job, or later you realize, okay, these are the things that I need to have, and then it becomes difficult. So when you say with Let's Unbound, we are preparing children with 21st century skills, what are those core skills, that you will be providing?
Right. So I think Gaurav apt on the both the aspects, right? So to really master something, we believe you should teach that, right? And there's one concept that we are experimenting is something called as peer tutoring, where something you have learned in our classes at Let's Unbound, you're trying to teach to a fellow friend or a classmate out there, right? To really build your confidence. And second, just to test yourself, have you really understood out there? Because if you can articulate a concept, I believe to a grade 5 student, you have really, really understood out there. The second aspect in terms of 21st century skills, and I would say it's a overused word now in the current space, because we use it very loosely at times. And I'll just give you a framework that we follow. And then rather than going into specific skills, I'll talk about how I look at what should be the
Wow.
approach to acquire these skills, right? So again, there are different frameworks out there, but one of the key framework is the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs,
Okay.
where they have mapped what are some of the key skills in terms of foundation literacy, in terms of competencies that an individual should have in the current century out there. And they looked at a decade in terms of how the transition of skills would be, right? So there are a lot of skills from foundation literacy, like communication skills, mathematical literacy, competencies, digital literacy skills, then global awareness, right? So there's a long list of courses out there. I would say, if I have to kind of summarize that, anything that gives you leverage, right? So for example, if you're a good orator or a good public speaking, right, you have those kind of skills, that gives you a lot of leverage, right? Versus somebody who is equally qualified but not able to articulate their ideas.
Correct.
Or coding and computational thinking, right? There has been a lot of debate whether it's a good skill or not. It's an important skill, whatever your career path is, right? Even if you want to become a doctor or I'm an educator, I use all those skills to make my work more efficient. It also gives me a thought process how to structure a problem statement. Personal finance, right? Critical thinking. So we can keep talking about a lot of these skills, but I would say one important skill, or rather, I would say the overall idea is anything that gives you leverage is an important skill to learn out there, right? And there's a big framework on World Economic Forum that anybody can go back and check. Other important idea that I want to highlight is learning to learn, right? And I recently wrote about it in LinkedIn, and I keep talking about it whenever I get this question. What is the most important skill? The most important skill is learning to learn, right? We didn't had we had a lot of talk about AI and other things since, past few years. But in the last 6 to 12 months is where we have seen things getting executed, and it has become more of a product which has come to consumers like you and me, right? So, and I see a lot of early adopters, and they are in different age groups. So I was talking to another professor recently. She is in her 50s, and she has picked up Chat GPT and how to
Yes.
use education. So I think that's one skill I would say is very, very important, right? It's not that you have done your studies and now you're prepared for life, and that's the, so to say, a problem with the thought process, and that's what we are trying to do at Let's Unbound. It's a lifelong learning process, whether it's 21st century skill or whether it was 20th century or it's going to be 22nd century. That skill, I would say, will help you differentiate, right? So that's how I would like to answer and share my thought process around 21st century skills.
Sir, I think you mentioned a very important point: learning to learn. With time, with change. So because ideally, what happens, we are all curiously waiting for iPhone 15 to come with new features, new design, more megapixels, more camera. But when we talk about ourselves, when was the last time we upgraded ourselves in terms of technology, in terms of learning any course, or overall? That is something that people most of the time ignore. So I think that's a very important aspect you touched about. And the second thing, when you said, for example, when you are teaching directly, Chat GPT may not be related to you an AI skill, but because it will help you, it will give you that advantage if you learn it. The word you use, the leverage, then I think that is where it makes you stand apart as compared to the people in the same field and with the same qualification. So, sir, with the Let's Unbound, have you, and I had seen your post on Chat GPT also. So, in education sector, have you, like with Let's Unbound, started using this AI technology?
Right, and I would say a lot, right? Because and there are different aspects, like administrative aspects out there where we use it for research. We use it, working on our curriculum. We use it, and in fact, I have designed a workshop for educators and school leaders, right? And we have done that with few schools in India, where I'm teaching them how to use these tools, what's the right prompt, how to structure, what are the different use cases out there. It can be integrated in education, right? Because what I realized is that there were, so to say, 2 3 key waves that came in around technology, right? And first of it was computers and internet, I would say, and then now this AI. And a lot of people, especially in the education world, they were very late to catch on those ideas, right? Because I remember in our school days, and I recently wrote about it, we would participate in a debate competition where, school computers replace our jobs, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
there was some ready-made stuff that will kind of prepare, because we didn't have that perspective, right? And as I grew up, I realized the potential the technology gives you out there. And again, now we are at a similar stage where if you have missed or even leveraged the first wave of technology, I would say this is really the second or the third wave where whatever way you look at, we should leverage it, right? And a lot of people are adopting it, but I see there's still a lot of apprehension about it, right? And it's going to penetrate. That's very clear, right? Which has happened with all the technologies. The idea is you have to quickly decide on which side you want to be and start leveraging these tools, whether you are an educator or you're doing anything else out there.
Sir, one thing I must say that you are keeping track of almost all the things, whether it is Chat GPT, whether it's new methodology to teach. So there is too much on your plate. So as an entrepreneur, I would say, and as an early stage entrepreneur, when you're building Let's Unbound, what are you say are the 2 3 core challenges that you face, and how are you tackling with them?
So I think, yeah, that I see a lot of challenges and opportunities out there, right? So I think one of the, I won't put it as a challenge, but getting the right team in the organization and make them work together, and I think is one of the key aspect that I really focus on, right? And I think earlier in our conversation also we talk about having the right people as a part of the team. becomes very, very important, and it frees a lot of my time as a founder so that I can focus on high impact strategic stuff out there, right? So I would say one of the key things is getting the right hiring in place, right? So that's I would say the biggest challenge, and as well as the opportunity out there I see, right? And I think the other thing in terms of which was initially challenging, I would say, I was primarily educator, and I had to take a lot of administrative, and I still do a lot of administrative stuff out there as part of the organization, right? And it's from hiring to financials, which of course it helps to give you a wider perspective. Earlier, my so to say work was more deeper. I would try to build expertise in one thing. Now I've got much wider, right? So that has really helped me because I see a lot of creativity happens when two or three different streams or subjects, they kind of intersect out there. So I can pick up ideas from psychology and implement it elsewhere out there, right? So that has been, I would say, a challenge, but also it has given a lot of opportunity. And one more thing that I have learned, right, after living my corporate life, and I keep upgrading myself, is this idea of mental models, and I use that a lot in my decision making out there, right? And I've gone through the respected Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, their life learnings, and how they have built their organization, and what kind of tools they use to make their decision, right? Because as a founder, I'm making decision every day, and a lot of them out there, right? And we don't know whether those are right or wrong, right? Because we are not perfect. So, but I have kind of built these some mental models in my head whenever I want to make a decision, right? Whether it's about our culture, whether it's about where to invest, whether it's about whom to hire, whether it's about saying yes to certain things and saying no to other things. So those mental models have really, really
Sir,
helped me
can you
overcome,
give an
some of these
example, I think,
challenges.
like of mental model?
So,
If you could give an example of mental model.
So one example is which I use a lot is, and I've learned more from my co-founder, I should credit him, is about optionality in life,
Okay.
right? For example, I left my job, right?
Yes.
So there is always an optionality, right? Where if you take a decision, the loss is less, but if you gain, the gain will be 10x or 100x out there, right? So
Okay.
that's the idea of optionality out there. So when I left my job, I had not much to lose because I spent enough time in the industry. I knew even if things don't work out for a year or two, I can always go back to my regular,
Right.
corporate life, which I loved, right? And what would I lose, right? Probably a year of salary, right? That's so to say a less loss. But what if, right? If I become a travel photographer I always wanted to be, or educator I've always wanted to be, or entrepreneur, which I didn't realize, though I come from a business family, right? Uh, the rewards are could be 10x, 100x. I don't know how the future would be, right?
Yes.
So this mental model of optionality has really worked well.
Would that be a bigger loss? But I think this concept that you explained now, it helps me identify that how to, take those decisions. So I think personal
Right, and
development.
I've learned it from the giant, right? So this is all it's not I've realized, right? There are a lot of people who have documented these ideas, and I learned from them, right? So all due credits to Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett, and there are a lot of other people, right, who have worked on these ideas. And I think most of entrepreneurs probably work on these idea out there of optionality.
Sir, one question I wanted to ask was, and this is like from my personal aspect, when you are building this organization, right, there is one aspect where you are seeing where you have to implement things. Okay. uh, for example, this is where we are going to invest, you go ahead and you implement it. Then the rest of the time that you have, where you mentioned, are you continuously thinking, okay, now what are the different ways through which we can improve it, what better methodology we bring, or how do we reach more people? Is that a continuous, is that a process to, there is a process to it that you're doing, that this much time I devote just to work and improve upon things and think upon that?
Right, and I think that's an interesting question. Why, while I always want to do high impact stuff as a founder, it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right? Because there are a lot of tactical and administrative stuff that you have to handle out there, right? Given the size of the team and the areas we want to invest in. right? So what I do, and which I learned during my MBA that back in 2010 and 12, is something called as the idea of reflection time
Okay.
out there. And I'm thankful to my teachers, and we had a course which they would say Gita principles in management and in life, right? And from there we picked up this idea of reflection time. So during, I would say, uh, as an entrepreneur, you are working, so to say, continuously, right? But I ensure either on a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever ideas I have, I kind of keep saving them during the week out there, right? Whether I picked up some interesting post on LinkedIn, or I went to a website, or there's a problem statement I'm trying to solve, and there's no immediate answer. I would put them in OneNote or in Notion out there, and on the weekend I'll just go through them, just to reflect on them and just say, okay, which ideas to discard, which ideas to keep, which key decisions to make out there, right? So that's something I try to do. I'm not always successful, but that's the approach that I tend to take, and that has worked for me for a long while now, right? So that reflection time is very, very important, right? And I realize for me, Saturday and a Sunday kind of work over there. Of course, as an organization, we are working, but I kind of take that break, that me time, to really think about a lot of decisions, professional as well as personal out there.
So I think that's a wonderful approach, reflection of time. And I think if an entrepreneur listens to this would really help them also. So coming to the
I hope.
last, yes. Sir, coming to the
Yeah.
last question of this section. So there are certain professions, which are considered very noble when you're part of it. And it's more of a responsibility and less of, you can say, the business aspect is there. Same is the one which you are in. When you're teaching kids, you're almost shaping the future of the country. So how do
Right.
you take that responsibility part? Growing a business is one aspect that obviously is there, but how do you take that responsibility part?
Right. And over here, I don't remember the exact Hindi quote, but I kind of wrote about it very recently, right? And I think a lot of ideas we are talking, something I have been thinking and wrote recently, right? And this is what Chanakya said, right? That a nation, right, it all stands on its tradition and values, which are when educators fulfill their responsibilities, right? So when we are able to build a national character, or I would say now in the world, we're talking a global character in everyone, that's when a teacher or educator has succeeded out there, right? So our job is not just to solve a math problem. Our job is to build characters and ultimately build human beings who uh, are responsible citizens of the world, right? So that is, I would say, gives me the most satisfaction. While it's uh, one way to look at it is a pressure, I see it's more as an opportunity out there, right?
Yes.
Because if we won't do it, who will? Is what I keep asking myself, Gaurav. Why? Uh, I'm being blessed or privileged to be among, so to say, top percentile in terms of education that I've received out there, whether in India or across the world, right? Also, post MBA, working in an environment where, again, uh, having the financial and means out there, right? So the idea is, if people like us won't take this responsibility of educating and building the nation, who else will, right? So that's the kind of thought I keep thinking as my role out there, and it's a big responsibility, but then taking pressure doesn't help. Looking at the opportunity, even if we are able to influence the life of, I would say, even a one student out there, right? That's a win for us.
Sir, I think that's a very wonderful philosophy. And sir, I truly believe that what you're doing with Let's Bound and what you're doing with the education system will really help prosper the future. Sir, with
Yeah,
this,
we hope so.
sir, as they say, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, but I think it applies to Jack of all ages. So, sir, now moving to the lighter side of the conversation. So, when you're not working, not thinking about any strategy or any growth or any acquisition, what do you like to do normally?
So I love photography and travel,
Yes, sir.
and telling you truly, I am not able to get as much time out there, right, to travel and do photography, right, and that's something I would say at times I'm also missing. in this new, so to say, journey of being an entrepreneur. But yeah, I spend my time with family. So I would say earlier I was moving a lot, right? Going out. Now these days, I'm spending more time with the family because the days are really hectic at times,
Right.
and I miss on some days the family time. So I kind of compensate whenever I'm free out there.
Yes, sir. And sir, so have you watched any movie recently?
I would say the worst person to ask about movie because my friends and relatives, they laugh on me because I end up confusing the actor and actresses of Bollywood also, right? Uh, I'm uh, I think it happens like there has been months and at times year that I've not seen a movie. So because there's a, so to say, it might sound very rational thought, there's an opportunity cost out there, right? So I don't invest a lot in understanding what's happening in the latest series, or sometimes I feel out of circle, but I'm like, that's okay for me, right? So I'm not really a movie buff out there. Of course I want to watch some movies, those are pending, but yeah, they're always pending.
But I would say always thinking about work, because even that time you're thinking about the opportunity cost. I'll go, time will get wasted. Instead of that, I can work on
Yeah,
this.
that's not about work. I can spend that time on personal stuff, right, with my
Yeah,
family, doing something else, or pursuing a hobby, right? So I'm not really a movie buff out there, and I would only know the names of some popular movies because of media or social media. A lot of movies I won't even know the names out there.
right, sir. So my next question. So any role models you have in your life, or you aspire to be like them?
So I have a lot of role models, and one question I keep wondering always, if I meet my role model, what would I ask them? Right?
Yes.
So that's a question I keep wondering if I head out there. And I had the opportunity to meet a lot of people, and the different people, I would say, in different aspects of life, right? So one of the person I really look up to is Sal Khan from Academy. So what
Yes.
he has been doing on in the education space, right? So that's one person I look up to, right? There are a lot more people, so, and these are fellow educators that I look up to in terms of inspiration, right? So I look up to Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett in terms of the mental model aspect, how they build wealth and how do they share it with other people. And I do spend a lot of time reading about Indian ancient wisdom, right? So there are a lot of, I would say, rishis and gurus. I won't call them role models, but I look at what they said about life, and there's this idea of what you call as Lindy effect, right? Something which has stayed, for a while, it will continue to stay. So just to give you the example, it's about uh, if a book or an idea which has say stayed for 50 years, the chances is it will stay for another 50 years. It sounds very counterintuitive, but that's the idea. And that's what I see a lot of our Indian wisdom, or I would say the wisdom of a lot of cultures, right? The ancient wisdom, it has stood the test of time. So I do spend whenever I get time reading about that, right? And there's a lot of a lot of people I can name, but I would say the whole idea of that wisdom is something I look up to as a role model.
Right, sir. And sir, coming to the last question of the day, sir, you don't like movies, but let's say tomorrow, if a movie is to be made on your life, what title would you give it?
Oh, no, don't ask me that. We can cut short this question, Gaurav. I'm not. I would say I'm not. So to say, achieved anything in life, right? Like MS Dhoni or these guys, or Mary Com, where you would make a movie. So probably once we reach to that stage, we can pick up this question and come back to it. Today, I don't think so.
Sure, sir. So with this, we have come to the end of this conversation, and I would say every time I have a conversation, personally, this was a great learning from me. The things you spoke about the mental model, about your teaching philosophy, and about life in general, I would say these are the things that I will have take away with me. And I truly believe whoever would be watching this, whether they are, educator, whether they are entrepreneurs, they would also have a lot of learnings to take from this conversation. So once again, I'll say, so thank you so much for coming. And it was amazing, having a conversation with you after, I'll say, almost 2 years.
So feelings are mutual, right? So I'm glad to be here with you and talking about what I've been doing. And yeah, hopefully the discussion we had, if it creates inspire or creates even a impact in one person's life, I think our job is done.